Hey everybody, let's do some debunking. Welcome to Curtis Reacts. The video we're looking at today is called Christopher Hitchens' Sharpest Arguments Against Religion. I've been wanting to make this video, like the one I'm talking in right now, for 10 years. Let me give you a little bit of my story. So I started on YouTube back in, I think it was the dinosaur times, 2010. And part of the reason I wanted to get into YouTube was at the time, Christopher Hitchens, the other Richard Dawkins kind of guys were all over YouTube, and it was like, that was the zeitgeist, and they were making all these arguments, and I thought to myself, wow, Swedenborg has the answers to these things. For a little bit of background on me, I am what you could call a Swedenborgian Christian. You can check out my other channel. I have laid out my positions. I'm not just waffling around. We got 1,000 videos on there. And also what I'm doing here is not what I think of when I think of apologetics. Like, oh, Christopher Hitchens and these other guys made these arguments against religion, so I'm going to come back and make these counter arguments that I've thought out based on their arguments. This is stuff that Swedenborg has been saying since the 1740s. So this is stuff that was already tenets in his worldview. So I'm not just, you could, if you've never heard of that, watch me watching this and say, oh, you're just making up whatever. We'll make it so his arguments are wrong. Okay, let's get into it. Oh, I should say this video was just made like a month ago. It's a composite on another channel. So this one wasn't on YouTube back when I got on, but it's the sharpest arguments. So we better respond to this one.
I submit that if we knew half of what we know now about physics, about biology and astronomy, the Abrahamic religions couldn't be founded in this day. None of them could be founded and believed in by people who knew what we now know.
Okay, what do we now know?
Human species is, let's say, at least 100,000 years old. It's probably much older, maybe 250,000 years. You have to believe this to believe in Abrahamic religion. You have to believe the following, that for, let's call it 100,000 years, humanity is born, doesn't live long, mostly dies in childbirth, dies of its teeth, dies in terrible wars, famines, plagues, dies in fear because it doesn't know why there are volcanoes, doesn't know why there are plagues, doesn't know why there are earthquakes or tsunamis.
That wave is scary.
Fear, misery, shame, terror, cruelty of all kinds. And for the first 97,000 of those years, heaven watches like this.
It's a pretty good heaven impression.
Then after 97,000 years of it decides, we can't let this go on. We'll have to intervene. But only in the most barbaric and backward parts of the Middle East will we show our face to people who can't read, who are terrified, who are ignorant, who live basically with and like animals.
So he's saying, like, God caring about what's going on and God affecting what's going on started when the Bible stuff started. According to Swedenborg, the people in that earliest period of human existence had it better than we have it now. Back then, yeah, there wasn't the Bible. Why write the Bible or the initial books of the Bible, the things that became the Bible, so late in the human journey? It's because back before that, human beings didn't need written revelation because there was open connection between the heavens and the earth. It was like you would think it would be if God just designed things from scratch. People that have these spiritual experiences, they would see people after they've died, they would be able to read the wisdom of God in nature. There was this total harmony between the spiritual and physical worlds. The whole, like, God needs to intervene in this new way and do the particular things in the Bible, that only came about because after that initial period, people started to become materialistic, self-centered. They started to want to conquer each other, and there needed to be, like, break the glass. We've got to set this off. We got to head this off at the past. So I would say no, that according to Swedenborg, the earliest period of humanity, people were not miserable and suffering. They were connected. They had a depth to them. They understood life in some ways better than we do. I don't know if, they knew how volcanoes worked, but they understood that consciousness survives death. They understood that God has divine providence, which is taking care of everything. They loved each other more deeply and more truly than we have now. I wouldn't necessarily trade our lives now for theirs. Why does the Bible focus on that particular part of the world? According to Swedenborg, there had been a particular strain of religion in that area that provides this particular function for God to stay connected to the human race. That prior to the Bible times, people were practicing all these different faith traditions that had real truth in them. That particular area of the world is set up so that what is described happening there can paint a symbolic story, which is what the Bible is, that then applies to all people for all times. The actual intervention in that time with those people, it wasn't what it was about. It was about the revelation that would come out of that, which today you have people poring over those stories and a lot of them getting something out of it that makes their life better, even if they can't quite understand, why do I care about what's happening with these people who are crossing the Tigris or Euphrates, or what does that mean to me? It's because that is where the revelation can take root and can affect everyone. And people living like animals. There's tons of barbarism in the Bible. I'm not saying this against Christopher Hitchens, but I'm saying this against the religion that he's reacting to. People have basically taken the Bible and said, well, what it is it's a report of how life should go or how God intervenes. But you could just go through the books, especially the Old Testament. People are not acting like you'd want to act because it's not what it is. It is this deeply symbolic description of the human journey. It is the way in which each of us, it's the story of each of our lives. It's like the hero's journey, but blown way up. And all the setting and everything like that was to set that up and provide this function that connects heaven to earth. So that's not when God said, I'm going to start caring about these people and I'm going to intervene for those people because they're the people I care about. This was to plant a written revelation that would supplant the original spirituality the human race had, because that was degrading, because people started to love power and love wealth, and that put us on the brink of annihilation because we're going to destroy ourselves unless we had this new code to live by.
That whatever may be the case, whatever is true, whatever may remain to us to find out, and as Socrates says, the great definition of wisdom is having some idea of how ignorant you are, whatever the outcome is, morally, scientifically, or logically, that cannot have been the case. Religion is false. I take my stand.
I would say Swedenborg, who I'm sure was aware of Socrates, said it is wisdom to recognize that what you do know is nothing compared to what you do not know. So I'm with you on that, Christopher Hitchens. So his argument number one is God was absent for much of the human race. Why isn't he with everyone all the time? According to Swedenborg, God has been present with the human race since the beginning. This is why did every culture have religion? Why did every culture have something spiritual? It's because it's based on the spiritual experiences they were having, even if that had to turn into an oral tradition after they stopped having them. And the Bible was not for the people that it happened to at the time. It was for the entire human race to live from after that, which is exactly what's happened. And check out my channel if you want to see the symbolic nature of the Bible and why it's not about the literal sense.
Some people I know who are atheists will say they wish they could believe it. Some people I know who are former believers say they wish they could have their old faith back. They miss it. I don't understand this at all. I think it's an excellent thing that there's no reason to believe in the absurd propositions I just admittedly rather briefly rehearsed to you.
I don't know what those absurd propositions were. I think you might think, watching me, that I'm going to be like, hey, I don't like that you're arguing against the existence of God. I want to know why. If he's arguing against things that are immoral, unjust, because there's plenty of ideas in religion and about God that are bad. If he's arguing on behalf of humanity and goodness, all right, I'm not mad about that. So let's see what's going on here.
The main reason for this, I think, is that it is a totalitarian belief.
Okay. Totalitarian. Doesn't sound good. How so?
It is the wish to be a slave. It is the desire that there be an unalterable, unchallengeable, tyrannical authority who can convict you of thought crime while you are asleep, who can subject you, who must indeed subject you, to a total surveillance around the clock, every waking and sleeping minute of your life, I say of your life, before you're born, and even worse, and where the real fun begins, after you're dead.
Okay, so we're talking about sort of he knows when you're sleeping. Like, I know that's about Santa Claus. So we're saying it's a totalitarian thing. You want your faith back, that's bad, because that means you want to be a slave to God, who you can't do anything about what God is like, and he's going to set some rules, and why would you ever want to be in that? I think we're in a totalitarian thing either way. If it's just material that exists, I don't want to die. Doesn't matter. Totalitarian, you are going to die no matter what. The God that Swedenborg describes, which he seems here to be like, okay, he's going to convict you of thought crimes. So you because you didn't believe in God or whatever else, after you die, he's going to go after you. And it's totalitarian because the moving force or the thing you got to worry about is God's judgment on you, not whether or not the things that we do are inherently harmful or the things that we think are inherently corrosive. I'm assuming where he's going with this is, yeah, because God is going to scan what you do, and if he doesn't like what you do, then he's going to send you into hell where you're going to burn forever. According to Swedenborg, totalitarianism, not what God is. And that matches up much more with the world. Is the world pretty free? Can you be Christopher Hitchens and be saying, look, I don't think that there is any God? You do just fine. Are people free to go and live the life that they live? The only thing that happens in the afterlife, even though Swedenborg does talk about an afterlife where there is a heaven and a hell, those are states of being. The only thing that happens in the afterlife is that you become fully consistent. So if what's running your life is love, then the rest of you gets sorted out, so you're all about love. If what's running your life is what Swedenborg calls hell, which is at its root the desire to harm, dominate, exploit other people, then you fully devote yourself to that. The damage that comes from hell is because those behaviors and the thoughts that go with them are inherently destructive and corrosive. It's not because God steps in and says, you would have been fine harboring hatred and wanting to destroy people, but I'm going to punish you for it. Basing a human life around those things, it's just like if you say like, hey, don't tell me you're going to judge me for smoking or you're going to judge me for drinking Drano. This stuff itself destroys you. And God is trying to get you to not do that. But if we want to do it, everyone's allowed to do exactly what they want to do. Actually, hell, as Swedenborg describes it, is God has set up a place where if you have decided that that's what you're going to base your life around, hell is the best life you can have given that you're basing your life around that. It is not God's convicting you of thought crime. If you have thoughts that are destructive to yourself and others, they carry within them their own corrosive, destructive effect. The reason that I am Christian is because of the view that Swedenborg paints. Swedenborg was hundreds of years before Hitchens. He didn't know that Hitchens was going to have these arguments. But he was saying, just unprompted, freedom is what a human being is. That you have freedom and rationality, and that within you, God protects those qualities like you protect the pupil of your eye. This is like, no, if something's coming at me, I'm going to protect that. And those are never taken away, and you are allowed to live whatever life you want to live. And no matter what life you live, God is going to try to make you as happy as you can be, given the life that you choose. Actually, the nemesis of God is the desire to control and subjugate. That is what Swedenborg calls the devil. The desire to dominate and rule over another being. Swedenborg didn't believe in a devil that's an uncreated being of evil. The devil is inside any person when we want to dominate and control. And God is the opposite of that. God is the desire to let you be free and with a desire for you to be happy and to be able to live whatever life you want. There's just difference in the kinds of lives that we will have depending on what we gravitate toward. If you're going to make your life chock full of the pleasures of revenge and adultery and murder and hatred, okay, you cannot build a great life, and I can't hang out with you. So you're going to have to go over there and I go over here. That's what leads to all the steps that would create this separation in the afterlife that you say is heaven and hell. We're living that right now.
I don't want anyone to despair. We have a number of consolations. We have our own solidarity, we have love, we have literature, we have our duties to each other.
Don't want anyone to despair. That's good. And when he says we have love, God is love. Love is our life, and our life comes from God. God is love itself, according to Swedenborg. The most you know about God is when you've experienced love. Oh, that's a bit of God's nature. Duties to each other. Love has to have an expression in useful actions. According to Swedenborg, there was love and wisdom, and that leads to useful actions. That the God is made up of divine love and then emanates divine wisdom. That leads to useful actions. The duties to each other are the expressions of love. That's how love becomes real. So it's funny because he's saying, don't despair. This God thing's not real. We still have love in our duties to each other. That is where we most clearly interact with what God is. You want to go toward God, go toward love and the duties to each other. You want to go away from God, the terrible things we can do to each other. That's the opposite of God.
What leads to despair is to live the only life one has, being told what to do by despots and crackpots and pseudoscientists who claim the right to order us around in the name of God. Humanity has to outgrow and transcend that oldest of all the tyrannies.
Okay. You got all this good stuff. What's not good is people ordering you around and telling you what. Absolutely. Swedenborg, again, 1700s, said, even though you can benefit from a church, a religious institution where there are people who are teaching you, ultimately your knowledge of spiritual kind of stuff does nothing for you unless you make it your own. And you can only make it your own if you believe that it's good and you think that it's true. not under compulsion. So everybody has to take this journey where, sure, even if they were raised in some religion, you got to kind of shake it off, reassess, and look for you. What do you really believe is good? Do you believe this is good? What do you really think is true? What do you think leads to the good life? Ultimately, the church, as Swedenborg described it, is something that occurs in its most fundamental and true form is something that occurs inside an individual. So the only actual form of the church is between you and God does not barge in there. It emerges slowly as we get to hear ideas of revelation or ideas of this is that God exists, this is who God may or may not be, this is what is right and this is what is wrong. And as you start to warm to those and live by those, whichever ones you find that you believe in, then you start to build this church in you. The external thing, where a bunch of people get together and sit in pews and stuff, that can be good only, though, as an adjunct to the internal church, which is something that you have to come to in your own freedom, using your own rationality. So absolutely, people who are ordering you around, saying they speak for God, am I doing that right now? I don't think so. I can't make you do anything, and I wouldn't want to, and I wouldn't even know if I have it all right or not. But if somebody is trying to command you, it has to be something that arises in you because you love it and because you believe it's true.
Atheists do not say, we know there is no God. We say, to the contrary, no argument and no evidence has ever been adduced that we consider to be persuasive. There's no reason to believe in evidence or argument, ontology or science. The same with the afterlife. Of course we don't say that we know there isn't one. We say that we don't know anyone who can bring any reason to think that there is.
I gotta say, obviously didn't know Christopher Hitchens. I saw a clip once, though, of him where somebody was saying, well, what about all these near-death experiences? And he was like, oh, that's dumb. People think they were abducted by aliens, too. Yes, I get it that if you go and read the Bible or the Quran and it says there's an afterlife in there and you say this is thousands of years old, it's uncorroborated, there's no reason at all to believe in an afterlife. That's fine. The near-death experience is everything you'd be looking for. It occurs outside of religion, around the world, in people who don't have anything to gain by it. Sure, some people have written books, great, but that didn't start with everyone writing books. It started just with, just go ask anyone who works in the hospital. Everybody's experiencing this stuff. Of course, you can't reach into their mind and know if it's going. But I would say that one thing people have not done is go with an open mind. And I don't think Christopher Hitchens was doing this, or didn't seem to be. Go with an open mind and say, well, actually, maybe there's a little bit of a reason to think there's an afterlife. There's so much human experience happening around it.
This is a very important distinction, and it's very regrettable that you miss it. And I'm sorry to say, Dinesh, that the immediate loser in an argument about things of which we can and can't be certain, where the only thing that is certain in these laws is the principle of uncertainty, the immediate loser, the man who has to leave the island, sorry Dinesh again, right away almost, is the one who says, I already know all I need to know. I already have all the information I need. Indeed, I've been given it by a supernatural body.
Yeah, you could never have all the information you need to know. Obviously, I think that what Swedenborg had through his spiritual experiences is a incredible, I feel like almost unprecedented treasure trove of wealth, of knowledge about these very kinds of things. However, it's not everything there is to know. And I don't know, me being Curtis, who tries to read those books and think, how do I know I get what it's really saying, or how what it's really saying matches up with the nuances and the details of reality. So it's true to say, I know everything, not good. You can know some things. I can say, don't murder. I think there's a pathway where you can investigate life and find God there and keep growing in that. I think you can know some things.
I don't know about you, ladies and gentlemen, but when I hear people on the bus saying that they're talking to God, well, what do? You move closer to that person, or am I right in thinking you edge slightly away? I think that's a very good thing.
It's true. Even me, whenever I hear somebody say, well, God told me this, it is a little bit I'm not saying that God doesn't communicate with us. The communication between us and God, there's a whole system behind it. It's God through heaven into us, not hello, Curtis, turn left right now. I would be very nervous to try to pick out, this particular thought I have, that's from God. I think the generalities of what God is trying to do, and you can have a sense, but I'm with you. In fact, Swedenborg said, even angels who are just people in the afterlife who are really devoted to God and really open to that and get it, even they won't tell you what to do. They won't command you what to do. Again, you have to do it through your own freedom and rationality, but opening those more up to the influence of God. Okay, all right. So that's what I want to say. That's a pretty good encapsulation of a lot of the critique of new atheism, of religion, and I feel like, I'm not saying we couldn't have a new debate farther down, but Swedenborg, who again laid all this out in the 1700s, I think has effectively made these debates moot. Let's go have the new debates, because yeah, I don't disagree with a lot of what he's saying about religion and the corruption of it. But I'm saying I don't believe any of that stuff that he's talking about there, and yet I would call myself a Christian and a theist and all the above. Okay, go check out my channel if you want to see more about what Swedenborg does say. Go out and debunk your loved ones today. Thanks for hanging out.